mix. It's not, but I can't think of the technical word that I want there. And we're then going to row it up. We could either come back with a collection wagon, pick it up off the ground, stick it into a silage bunker, compact it, cover it over, and wait for it to turn into the appropriate form of silage, or we can bale it and wrap it. And we're going to go the baling wrapping method because that's what this farm is set up to do. I just store my silage in the silage bunker because in the real world you have to store your silage in specific ways, not close to a river. You got to make sure that the wrapping doesn't get torn because then it goes bad. You got to check it for animals trying to eat the wrapping and what have you. But you know, that sort of thing. So that's kind of a realistic side of things. I put my silage in the silage bunker because it has all the drainage required for dealing with the stuff that comes out of silage bales. The other option is you can store your silage on a field, and I know of a number of farmers in Ohio that have very long piles of or stacks of wrapped bales in fields, and obviously far away from rivers because you don't want the gunk coming off the silage messing up your water supply. Anyway, let's go back to the JCB, I think. Whatever it is. Massey Ferguson. I knew it was something. Oh, we need to start the engine again. So yeah, that's an aspect of Maize Plus. You can make multiple forms of silage, and we do have some silage just around the corner that is close to finishing. What's the word for it? Fermenting. Now on this particular map, we have feeding robots on all the husbandries placed on the map. Feeding robots, there was a warning when Maize Plus came out. Feeding robots cannot keep up with the food requirements of your animals because your animals are now eating almost 100% more food. It does vary between animals. So instead of eating, finger guessing work, 2,000 litres of straw of feed per day, the cows are eating 20,000 litres of food per day. Now that then means that if you're playing 1 day per month, you're going to have to get 20,000 litres of food into the cow per cow. Or you can play at what the Maize Plus team advise, which is play at least 3 days per month. It means that the animals eat less per game day. They still may eat the same amount per month, but per game day they eat a little bit less, and so you're probably going to be able to keep up with feeding them. Feeding robots cannot keep up as a general rule. However, another aspect of this particular map is the animal husbandries can house up to 1,000 animals. So we can have up to 1,000 cows in our cow barn. However, come on, just let it go. Let it go. Thank you. So because we can have 1,000 animals, the feeding robot is slightly more capable when it comes to producing food. So for the 60 cows we currently have, the feeding robot is perfectly capable of keeping up with supply. Since the shed is capable of holding 1,000 cows and theoretically the feeding robot can deal with that many, we can probably fairly safely go up to 100 cows and the feeding robot can manage that production rate. Anything over 100 cows, we're probably going to have to get a mixing wagon and mix the extra. We started with 5 cows, and I'm very carefully managing the increase of the number of cows in order to determine what's the ideal number of cows that we can have and still be producing the food that they need. So again, this is all part of the, hey, I'm a computer programmer, let's test out this game with the mods I've choose to play. We're playing with precision farming, so we've got all that aspect in. As I said, Maize Plus, so we've got aspects of that play as well. Okay, let's sort that out. And so that's kind of who I am and how I play. I try to play with a bunch of realistic mods. I've got ones that are sort of they're not necessary for gameplay. They don't necessarily create a super enhanced gameplay. Things like what is it? The increased dirt mod, which you'll have seen as our field equipment is going through dredging up dirt. It's churning up a lot more dust behind it. Exhaust smoke is a thing. Is a mod I've got running. It doesn't make the game any better or worse. It's just a thing that kind of visually makes it look a bit better. So that's some of the things. I haven't put manual attach on because that has been available since Farm Sim 17. I did try it in Farm Sim 17 and it caused so much grief. I'm playing a game, so while I like to play as realistic as possible, I don't want to be frustrated. So if I have a mod that is causing me frustrations, it's gone. And I really just haven't got round to reinstalling manual attach. Same with Courseplay. I did download Courseplay, and initially it worked quite well, and then it was patched, and then it stopped working properly. I think actually Giants patched the game and Courseplay didn't patch as quickly as possible. So because Courseplay is always a version of Farming Simulator behind what Giants has done, or always frequently, whenever Giants does a patch, it breaks Courseplay. I tend to find if I come to rely on something too much and then it's not available, that becomes a problem. It's something I definitely noted when we migrated from Farm Sim 17 to Farm Sim 19. We lost GPS. And oh my goodness, I have to do everything manually, and I haven't done that in 2 years. It was quite a frustrating little event. Now, since then, I still use GPS, but I tend to do manual tasks when I'm able, so that I'm always keeping my eye in. If push comes to shove, I do not have to do something with GPS installed. I can do it manually. So, yeah, things like that. There's another bale on its side. What I could do. I think I've got the reach. Have I got the reach? Do now. Ah, come on. Oh, seriously, come on. There we go. Okay, that can fall in there. And then anytime I feel like I can shred a bale into the bedding. Do your headset dust died? Ah. Yeah, I have a cordless headset, so basically because cords just become a problem around here sometimes. And when teenagers is doing school, I kind of have to spend a lot of my time on the headset, so it does need to be recharged almost daily, along with the phone sometimes. But I think I'm fairly happy with my setup now. We do have a UPS battery on every single computer in the house, which means that if power fails, the computer doesn't get fried, which I have had happen in the past. And the battery's good for about 2 hours. However, we now have a whole house generator, so the battery really only needs to be good for about 10 minutes at most. That the whole battery system does mean that we're not likely to fry a PC's SSD too frequently. But our batteries have power USB ports in the front. So I have permanently attached 2 recharge cables for phones and electronic equipment. One, the old small power or phone cord, and one, the more recent big phone cord. Mrs. Osa's got a similar setup on her PC, so we can charge our phones, we can charge tablets. We've got a set of sort of solar powered or solar recharged flashlights. We bought one for each car and a couple for in the house, and they use the old USB phone connection, which is why we still need both types of charger. They're really nice, nice little emergency tools for the car. They have a little sort of hammer on one end, on the heavy end, so you can smash out a window if you need to. They have a cutter so you can cut a seat belt, and then obviously they have the flashlight attachment, or the flashlight itself. One thing I have found is the charger is not fully capable. It's capable of keeping a charge in it recharges the flashlight so that it doesn't discharge too quickly, but you will find eventually the flashlight will discharge, so you have to plug it in sort of possibly once a month, maybe a little less frequently, just so that it keeps a charge and it's available in emergencies. And then of course it's got the directed flashlight, it's got a sort of I don't know, it's got a setting which just gives off light out of the side of the flashlight, so you can stick it down on the ground and use it as sort of a reasonable light source. But very handy piece of equipment to have around just in case of emergencies, and as I said, you have to recharge it occasionally. Yeah, there's those as well. This one, we just keep it one in each car, and as I said, every so often check it, make sure it's got a charge, and if it hasn't, just plug it into a cell phone recharger and on your next trip, and it will recharge sufficiently to run for to be there for another month. Seem to be doing this okay. Where do we got going? We've still got the The seed is still going and is incredibly full. It's only used 20% of the seed. I don't know how much of the field it's done. And the mass is still doing whatever it's doing, growing up, raking, that's the word. Still raking the whole crop silage, or the whole crop windrows. So that's good. Once the mass is finished, we can get over there and bale up the whole crop. We'll bring it back and we'll do some more work in this little thing. Loading up the wrapper. Please don't fall over. Do not fall over, thank you. And I'm not doing too badly stacking this. I think we could call it a respectable stack of straw that we have there. Got a single in the left bay just in case one falls over. Oh, worker C has finished their task. Well, look at that. Just talking about him as well. Massey has finished raking. We're going to have to tidy up the ends because it hasn't. It didn't do the top and bottom of each row. I can't believe, for years I avoided using skid steers. I wasn't entirely happy with them in Farm Sim 17. I believe Lawfolds came with a skid steer and the first thing I did was sell it. Kind of regretted it because Lawfolds had a lot of racks with seed and fertilizer on them, and I figured that the skid steer could probably maneuver in that shed to those racks. But the problem was, at the time I was playing with a very, very low spec system. It was probably about 3 or 4 years old and sufficiently capable of playing Farm Sim 17. However, it did struggle, and Lawfolds had a lot of decoration, shall we say, in each yard. So I will suggest. Oh, don't push that on a little bit further. Gotcha. Okay, for example, in this shed here, there is loads of stuff. On Lawfolds, there was lots of stuff placed on the map. So each item in that shed would be a thing that the game needed to plot. And the result was, whenever I was driving to the main farm, I would have to drive with the camera at that angle, so it wasn't trying to draw all those pieces of stuff that I couldn't see. As soon as I did that, frame rate just fell through the floor. So it was one of the things that prompted me to get a new PC, and I got one that was capable of running Lawfolds with and stream at the same time. So I started playing on that, but because of the graphic lag that I had playing Lawfolds initially, I pretty much used up all of the pallets of seed and fertilizer as quickly as I could, and then never used those racks again. What I ended up doing was I bought a tanker that could hold liquid fertilizer and a couple of auger wagons, and just every time I was short of seed, I would take the auger wagon to the store, load it up with seed pallets and bring it back to the farm, and I would replenish my seeders and fertilizer spreaders from the 2 auger wagons. And of course it made it a lot easier to do things on this, and that was the thing. Lawfolds, every single yard on Lawfolds had, like we have here, a liquid fertilizer tank, a solid fertilizer tank, and a seed tank. And so you could load your things up from those, but they charged about 10-15% more than buying pallets from the store. So for obvious reasons, and as a fledgling farm, I just got in the habit of buying the pallets at the store. And for ease of transport, I used an auger wagon, and so that just ended up as the way I did things on raw folds. I don't believe it's entirely realistic when it comes to UK farming. Auger wagons aren't a thing that's that significant. I don't believe. Okay, you're done. We will take you over here in preparation for doing stuff. Oh, I don't think I finished my story about the animal food here. So the robot does not like grass silage. It only likes whole crop silage, which is what this stuff is. And that is whole crop silage. Oh, that's handy. Yeah, things are moving on. Don't need the Land Rover. You're good. You're done. So silage for our cow food has to come from the whole crop silage, which can only be produced at this point in the year, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's what it is. So that's why we're doing this with our cereal fields. That on, and let's grab the ends. The thing is, sometimes what I would do is I would bale the middle and then do the headlands layer last. But I think we're good for just doing it this way. Will be sufficient. So yeah, so whole crop silage for us is most definitely a thing. I will try and lift that before we hit the errant row at the end. So one of the real life farmers I watch on YouTube actually has the previous model of this particular rake. And from my mind, this rake works a little bit better than the Kun rake, which I believe Giants released as a mod for 22. It was one of the DLCs back in 19. Okay, that's done. Drop that there. But the worker combine this one with the worker seems to get fairly good rows with no missed bits. I missed a couple of bits there, doesn't matter. But I'll take you to the store page. For the store page, windrowers. This one here. There is a problem that the wheel at the end, so on this end there is a slight bit that doesn't pick up crop, which means when it goes down the field that way and turns down and comes the other way, you end up with a little patch of a little patch of grass down here which hasn't been touched between the two main rows. So as soon as this DLC came out, I figured I'm going to try the rake. Rakes tend to be fairly cheap when compared with windrowers, and we'll see if it works any better. This one does work better. However, something I'm not too sure about is if you start messing with the row width which is produced, this point here you can suck it inwards and make the row narrower, which obviously could be helpful if you've got a mod baler that has problems with very wide rows. But I messed that up a little bit, I guess. Okay. But I haven't tried narrowing the windrow that is produced and seeing if a worker can still produce rows without missing bits between them. That skid steer's too old to have a safety cage. They didn't think that was a thing. I picked it up on the used market. eBay, I think. That was before the days of health and safety. At least that's my claiming. I'm sticking to it. Okay, that should work. I think that's... Oh, as long as I don't go too far north. That should work out quite nicely, and I keep drifting to the north, so I need to be careful there. And this bit at the end is just, well, it is what it is. We'll try and fix it as best we can. Now, windrows themselves aren't particularly horsepower intensive, so it's not like I have to have this windrower as compared with one of the ones with windmills. But I figured, yeah, it's DLC. I paid for the I paid for the season 1 pass, so I have it. So I figured, well, I might as well make use of that. We're also using the bale shredder, which I'm still not entirely sure I like that bale shredder, but again, I've got one, so it just about works. We'll live with it. If I get too frustrated with it, then that'll be the point where we just say, okay, I'm done with this bale shredder. Let's get a decent one. Or, yeah, we'll try out other ones and see if they work any better. That, in a way, that's part of the problem. Is what happened to the windrowing dude? He got stuck. What? Oh no, I'm being followed. Why is there a steering wheel ahead of me? Oh, that's... The steering wheel doesn't mean it's on follow me, it means it's a worker. Okay, that explains. No worries. And of course, the little red tractor doesn't go as fast as this one. I honestly don't know if I want to change that from a mulcher or not, so we'll change that back into a mulcher or not. So I'm going to leave it where it is. Windrowing. We are done windrowing.